Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and welcome back to another video. And before we get into it, I want to thank everybody who's subscribed so far. If you haven't, likes, comments, subscriptions, they really do help the channel out, and I greatly appreciate each and every single one of them. In the description, there's a link to my presidential election model as well as my Patreon. And today what I want to talk about is, well, the Supreme Court, and specifically some of the stuff going on. We'll know tomorrow who Donald Trump is going to nominate to fill the seat left vacant by the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and who is almost certainly going to be confirmed before the end of the year. Quite possibly before Election Day. And this is effectively assured because Mitt Romney has confirmed that he would vote for the whoever Trump nominated, which to me is a bit I had him as a likely no vote. So it shows you how much I figured out. Today we did get confirmation, by the way, from Alabama Senator Doug Jones that he would not vote in favor of Donald Trump's nominee. And I'm just going to assume that Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin vote no, though I think Joe Manchin could vote yes still. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about was a few things. The first is, do Republicans have a legal justification for voting in favor of a nominee for the Supreme Court? And the obvious answer is yes, of course they do. The constitutional argument is pretty simple, in fact. Too simple. Basically, the president is tasked with appointing justices to the Supreme Court. The Senate will give advice and consent or withhold said consent for the justice. And they argue that in 2016, they withheld it. At least that's what Senate Republicans would say. We all know it was political, but they could argue that they had a legal justification for not granting Merrick Garland a hearing. Again, we all know it's political. However, at the end of the day, they can make a legal argument for why they did what they did. 2, does precedent support them? Do they have precedent on their side for voting in favor of Donald Trump's nominee, whoever it may be? Believe it or not, yes, they do, actually. Very few Supreme Court nominees have occurred in presidential election years, at least in modern history. But throughout American history, when the president nominates a justice in a presidential election year, they have been confirmed most of the time. Only recently has that not been the case, and even then. And people will cite, well, they didn't do it in 2016, so why are they now doing it? Well, this is because people misunderstand what McConnell's rule was. He said that when the president and Senate differ in their political party, that there should not be a nominee until after the election. And this is really just an addendum on what used to be known as the Biden rule, which was basically the same thing. People just call it the McConnell rule because they hate McConnell. Question third. if the Democrats win control of the Senate and the presidency, would they be justified, assuming they hold the House, obviously, would they be justified in packing the court in 2021? And the answer is a resounding no, they would not. This would be the same if the parties were flipped, that no, they would not be justified in packing the court. And this is the issue that I wanted to get to today, which is court packing. The Democrats have basically threatened to become totalitarian and threatened to become tyrants. The majority of Democrats. There are a healthy amount, at least amongst their voter base, who don't like the idea of court packing. And I haven't heard what Biden has said regarding the Supreme Court and whether or not he would try to pack the court. However, both Pelosi and Schumer, as well as a few other congressional and Senate Democrats, have said that if Trump's nominee is appointed this year, they will pack the court the first chance they get. And that is a dangerous precedent to set. I think we all remember back in whenever Harry Reid scrapped the filibuster for lower court nominees, basically circuit and appeals court nominees. McConnell at the time told Harry Reid that he would regret it and that it would bite Democrats in the ass. So when Republicans took control of the Senate, McConnell scrapped the filibuster for Supreme Court nominees, basically following through on his promise that it would bite him in the ass. And if Democrats do pack the court, assuming, again, they win the presidency and the Senate, which neither of those are 100% certain, as a matter of fact, it's probably at max a 60% chance. Assuming Democrats do pack the court, what's to stop Republicans from doing the same thing when they get back in power? The answer is nothing. And you better believe that Republicans will remember it. If there's one thing Republicans are very good at, it's holding a grudge. Remembering when someone got hosed. A lot of Republicans were disappointed that Robert Bork didn't get appointed to the Supreme Court during the Reagan administration. So much so that we now have in our collective vernacular here in the United States the term borked. Whether or not that's actually from, as far as I know, that is actually a result. The word borked is actually a result of that instance in American history. So, I hope the Democrats would come to their senses and back off of the court packing threats. But it seems to be a problem that has always existed, at least in that party. Probably both parties, a temptation to pack the Supreme Court. Because if we remember correctly, Franklin Roosevelt tried to pack the court. And his efforts thankfully failed in Congress. And I don't believe that our country is that fractured, but if there were to be one thing that would truly put the test to our country and to our great nation, it would be court packing. And honestly, both parties should always tread lightly when it comes to the Supreme Court, because it is the only branch of the U.S. government that people as a whole consistently support. Approval rating for the Supreme Court almost always hovers at 60 to 68%. Somewhere in that range of around 2/3 of Americans support the Supreme Court and approve of the job the Supreme Court does. And it's relatively solid across the board whether or not an American will support the court, regardless of whether or not they're a Democrat or Republican or an independent or a third partier. People in the United States like the Supreme Court because in their eyes it is non-partisan. In their eyes it is apolitical. And it needs to remain that. And court packing is a threat against that independent nature of the judiciary. And by the way, I don't really consider filling a vacant seat with someone who is more ideologically similar to you, as long as it's a naturally occurring vacancy. I don't consider that court packing, because it's kind of your job, and you're of course going to pick somebody who is somewhat similar to you in terms of how you would consider ruling on most cases. But anyway, when you can just tell the court, rule this way or I'm going to add justices who will. That's like going up, famously, the France family. When I say the France family, I'm talking NASCAR here. They went out to their drivers who were threatening to boycott a race. They talked to the drivers and basically said, you will drive or we'll find someone who will. Packing the Supreme Court is walking up to justices and saying, rule in my favor or I'll find someone who will. And that is dangerous. Right now you can't do that. Because currently it says justices will hold the office in good behavior. And you can't just say good behavior means you agree with the administration. And most, if I can, most jurisprudence and most conventional, reasonable, and concurring thought regarding Supreme Court terms, according to the Constitution, is that justices hold them for life, and justices hold their position for life so long as they're not impeached and removed from office for, well, basically the same things you can remove a president for, or a member of the cabinet, or the vice president, or whatever, right? Basically high crimes and misdemeanors. So they hold their appointments for life. And it would require a constitutional amendment to change that, according to most legal scholars. But apparently there are people who don't think that it needs a constitutional amendment, because apparently there's a bill right now to set Supreme Court terms at a maximum of 18 years. Yeah, that's unconstitutional. I'm siding with the majority of jurisprudence that has actually existed for 200 years. In that, guess what? Supreme Court justices serve for life according to the Constitution. You want to change that? Amend the Constitution. And before anybody brings up in the comments, and why are you so vehemently pro-gun, when 200 years of jurisprudence before Heller indicated that it was a right of the government, not the people. Well, number one, that's blatantly false. It was 100% a right of the people. The Dred Scott decision confirmed it, because they ruled against Dred Scott, because if they ruled in favor of Dred Scott, it would mean that as a citizen, Dred Scott could own a gun. And of course, all of our founders were massive fans of people owning guns. More so than Democrats portray, the NRA is in favor seriously, it's not an understatement to say that the founders wanted everyone in America to be armed. But anyway, I'm going to end it on this, in that if you truly do want to see an independent judiciary, you cannot in any way support court packing. So, anyway, I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Take it easy. Have a very nice evening.